3 in the morning is a strange time to celebrate anything. But I didn't care. I had just finished my second job, 10 hours on the warehouse floor followed by another 6 behind the wheel of my delivery van. My back ached, my eyelids burned, and the bouquet in the passenger seat looked like it had seen better days. Still, I was excited. She had done it. Jenna. After 6 long years of nursing school, night classes, student loans, clinicals, and every kind of breakdown in between, she had finally graduated. And I had been there through it all. Every step. The quiet support. The bills. The side jobs. The takeout meals eaten sitting on boxes because we couldn't afford a dining table yet. We had a plan. We always had a plan. I lift you now, and when the time comes, we rise together. That's what I believed. So I stopped at a corner store on the way home and picked up a card that said, "You did it," in tacky gold letters. I scribbled something half sincere inside. Couldn't even remember what. Something like, "I'm proud of you, and here's to our next chapter." I parked 2 streets down so she wouldn't hear the van. Quietly crept up to our apartment door, fumbling for the keys with the flowers in one hand and the card in my mouth. But something was off the second I opened the door. Too clean. Too staged. The lights were on, soft jazz playing on her Bluetooth speaker. A bottle of Prosecco sat on the kitchen counter beside 2 flutes. I almost smiled, until I noticed the envelope beside them. My name, in her handwriting. I reached for it slowly. Behind me, I heard the soft click of heels against hardwood. She stepped out of the bedroom in a white robe. Not the one she wore around the house. This one was new. Expensive. Her hair was done, makeup flawless, smile too relaxed for 3 a.m. "You made it back," she said lightly, pouring herself a drink. She didn't pour one for me. I set the flowers down on the counter, suddenly unsure what I was supposed to say. She motioned to the envelope. "Go ahead. Open it." I did. Divorce papers. 6 years together. 4 years married. I had met her in college when I was a night janitor and she was taking anatomy at community college. We had moved into this shoebox of an apartment after our wedding, splitting rent with one paycheck while I juggled 3 jobs so she could study. And now, she was leaving. Just like that. I looked up. "You're serious?" She sipped. "Completely." "Why now?" I asked. Her eyes didn't waver. "Because I finally have what I need." "You mean a license?" "I mean freedom." There was no bitterness in her voice. Not even anger. Just a kind of clean, well-practiced detachment. Like this was something she'd rehearsed 100 times in her head. And maybe she had. "I helped you get here," I said quietly. She shrugged. "I never asked you to." I should have argued. Should have screamed, demanded an explanation, begged even. But instead, I just nodded. My body felt numb. My hands did the thinking for me, picked up the pen she had so helpfully left beside the folder and signed. One clean stroke. No hesitation. When I handed it back, she smiled, actually smiled, and said, "You're doing the mature thing." There was nothing left to say. I walked out with my work boots still on, the scent of sweat and cardboard and engine grease clinging to me like a second skin. The bouquet stayed on the counter, unopened. I didn't slam the door. Didn't curse. Didn't look back. The night was quiet, streets empty. I got in the van, turned the key, and drove. I didn't know where I was going yet. But I knew one thing. She had graduated. And I had finally woken up. I didn't pack everything. Just what I needed to move, to disappear. A couple changes of clothes, tools I couldn't replace, the battered coffee maker that somehow still worked. Everything else, wedding photos, handwritten notes, framed certificates, went into a box I left in the alley dumpster 2 blocks away. I didn't leave a note. She didn't deserve one. By dawn, I was already 3 hours outside the city. I took the back roads, avoiding the highway like it could somehow pull me back. I ignored my phone. Ignored the buzzing. Ignored my brother's voice and voicemails, asking if I was okay. Asking where I was. I wasn't ready to answer either question. I reached Timber Ridge, a quiet, shrinking town halfway between nowhere and something smaller. There was one gas station, a diner that looked older than my parents' house, and a row of worn-out homes with tilted porches and overgrown lawns. It felt like the kind of place people came to forget things. I pulled into the first motel with a working neon sign and paid cash for the week. The clerk didn't ask questions, just handed me a room key and a stack of towels without looking up from his crossword. The room was small, single bed, tiny window, the kind of carpet you don't walk on barefoot. But it was clean. And more importantly, it was mine. That afternoon, I found a job. Manual labor. The kind that eats your hands and your spine but leaves your head quiet. A local guy named Pete needed an extra pair of arms on his construction crew. He asked if I had experience. I said yes. He asked if I had a record. I said no. He nodded and handed me a pair of work gloves. By the end of the week, I was sleeping in a studio above an old garage. Leaking ceiling, crooked floorboards, no heat. Still better than anything I'd had in months. I bought a mattress off a guy selling used furniture out of a trailer. Carried it up the stairs myself. Ate soup out of a can the first night. Slept in my clothes the second. Third night, I didn't dream at all. The thing about disappearing is, it's not about being gone. It's about being unnoticed. No social media. No credit card trail. Cash only. Different zip code. No friends. No stories. I wasn't running. I was erasing. Sometimes, I'd catch myself wondering what Jenna was doing. Whether she'd moved out of the apartment, if someone else was drinking Prosecco in the kitchen I paid rent for. If she cared I was gone. I stopped those thoughts like you stop a leak in a pipe quickly before the damage spreads. One night, about 2 weeks in, I sat on the front step of the garage, drinking instant coffee that tasted like rust, and realized I hadn't said my name out loud in days. Not to anyone. Not even to myself. It felt good. Quiet. Like maybe if I didn't speak it, it couldn't follow me here. Timber Ridge moved slowly. People didn't ask why you were here. They just assumed you had a reason. I fixed things, carried things, helped build things. My body hurt every night, and for the first time in years, I didn't mind the pain. There was no plan. No next step. Just distance. From her. From what we were. From what I let her turn me into. One evening, I walked past a mirror in the corner of the auto shop and barely recognized the man in the reflection. Rough stubble. Grease-stained hands. Eyes that didn't flinch. I didn't know if I liked him, but I trusted him more than the man who brought flowers to a woman already writing him out of her life. I didn't expect to stay in Timber Ridge more than a few weeks. But weeks turned into months. My face became familiar in the diner. My name started appearing on paper slips in the hardware store, and the mattress I slept on stopped feeling like a placeholder. The garage I lived above still groaned when the wind picked up, and the water heater made sounds like it was choking on its own rust. But I fixed what I could. Taped what I couldn't. It was mine, and for now, that was enough. I worked 6 days a week. Construction during daylight, Pete's crew rotated between roofing, framing, and hauling gravel. After sunset, I'd walk the half-mile to the diner and take whatever shift gust threw my way. Fixing loose tiles, repainting the back wall, unclogging grease traps. There was comfort in it. The ache of my back, the soreness in my palms, the silence of people who didn't care where I came from. No one asked why I worked so much. No one asked who I used to be. And I didn't offer. On Sundays, the only day Pete gave us off, I stayed in the garage. I'd take apart old appliances just to clean and reassemble them. I found a broken fan behind the diner one day, fixed the motor, and left it running beside my bed like white noise. I ate canned soup and day-old sandwiches, drank instant coffee, and let my body shrink into the quiet. Nights were cold but simple. No messages. No expectations. Just sleep. One evening in late September, I was fixing the front steps of the diner when I saw the Jeep again. Silver. Covered in dust like it had been through every state line. She parked without hesitation and stepped out like she belonged there. Same worn denim jacket. Same boots. Hair tied back, camera resting on her chest like it was part of her. She didn't look at me right away. Just walked to the edge of the lot and stood still, taking in the sky like it was telling her something. I went back to sanding. She came closer. Not fast. No sudden moves. Just calm, quiet steps until she was standing near the toolbox. "You work here?" she asked. I nodded. "You fix things." "Mostly." "Then you'll hate this town," she smiled. "Everything's broken." I didn't laugh. She didn't mind. That night she was inside, corner booth, black coffee, same camera on the table. No laptop. No phone. Just her and a small leather notebook she kept flipping open, writing in messy strokes. I stayed behind the counter, wiping trays that didn't need wiping. Every few minutes, I looked up. She was still there. The next day, same thing. And the next. She didn't talk much. Just watched. Eventually, Gus asked, "You know her?" "No." "She watches you work like she's trying to figure out what you're made of." "I'm not that complicated." Gus grunted. "No one ever is. Until they are." That weekend, I was tuning a carburetor behind the garage when I heard her boots crunch the gravel. "Name's Riley," she said, finally. I nodded. "Still don't want yours?" she added. I didn't say that. She raised her camera. Can I take a photo now? I hesitated. My hands were covered in grease, shirt torn at the shoulder, sunburn creeping up my neck. Why? You look like a person who stopped pretending. I let her. She snapped 3 quick frames, then lowered the lens. No pose. No direction. She didn't ask me to move or fake a smile. She just captured whatever I was in that moment. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the sound of water pipes tick cooling through the walls. I didn't know her story. She didn't know mine. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't mind the idea of being seen again. It was sometime in late October when I started talking again. Not polite words. Not answers to cash or card, or, "You still working doubles?" Real words. About real things. Riley was sitting on the tailgate of my truck, camera in her lap, boots caked in dry mud from wandering the edge of the woods. The sun was sliding low over the ridge, soft orange light cutting the yard in half. I was finishing up welding a bracket on the old bike I'd been rebuilding for weeks. She watched in silence, as she always did. And when the welding torch hissed out, and I pulled the visor off, she said, "Tell me something." "Like what?" She shrugged. "Something true." I wiped my hands and sat on the wheel well beside her. Thought about lying. About keeping it surface level. About saying something harmless like, "I hate traffic," or "I never liked ketchup." But the silence was steady, gentle, and I realized I wanted to speak into it. "My ex-wife divorced me the day she graduated nursing school," I said. Riley didn't react. She handed me the papers the same day I brought home flowers. I was working 2 jobs to keep us afloat while she studied. Still no reaction. She said she needed to grow without dead weight holding her back. Riley tilted her head, but said nothing. She didn't offer pity. Didn't interrupt with outrage on my behalf. Just waited. I signed the papers. Didn't say a word. Packed up and left 2 days later. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not even my brother. "How long ago?" she asked quietly. "Almost a year." She nodded. Looked down at her fingers. "I thought it would have been longer." "Why?" "You carry it like it's been welded into your bones." That hit deeper than I expected. She didn't ask for details, not about the wedding, the years before, the slow erosion that made me invisible in my own home. She didn't ask what my ex looked like or if she tried to reach out. And that's what made me keep talking. "I used to think that hard work was enough," I said. "Like if I just put in the hours, kept the bills paid, kept showing up, that love would stay." "But it didn't," she said, not as a question, but as a fact. "No," I answered. "It didn't." The air around us felt clearer somehow. Like the weight of the unspoken had lifted just enough to let breath in. She told me about places she'd photographed, dead towns in Utah, a ghost diner in Arkansas, a family of ranchers in Idaho who let her sleep in their barn. She didn't have a base. Didn't want one. "But you're still here," I said. "Still deciding," she replied. Over the next weeks, she kept coming back. Sitting beside me in the garage. Fixing the squeaky stool at the diner with me. Taking photos, not of me, but of objects. My hands on a wrench, steam rising from the coffee machine, a torn glove on the workbench. I started noticing small things about her too. She never asked for Wi-Fi. She always tipped in cash, even when her order was just tea. She never flinched at silence, and she didn't fill it with stories to prove she existed. One night, after a late shift at the diner, we ended up sitting on the garage roof. Blankets wrapped around our shoulders, thermos between us, stars cracked across the sky like broken glass. "You ever regret leaving?" she asked. "No," I said. "You ever regret staying so long?" I thought about that one. "I regret not seeing it sooner," I said. Not realizing she'd already left, long before she packed a box. Riley nodded. "I get that." She leaned her head on my shoulder. And for once, I didn't pull away. I didn't think about Jenna. I didn't hear her voice. I didn't see her face. Just the quiet. Just the night. Just someone who didn't want to fix me, or explain me, or use me. Just someone who stayed. Jenna thought it would feel like a victory. The diploma on her wall. Her name on the door. The absence of Marcus in the apartment. She believed that once the weight was gone, she would float. She didn't. She sank. At first, it was fine, easy, even. She slept in. Rearranged furniture. Posted smiling photos with captions like "new chapter" and "no regrets." Her mother, Carla, approved. Her best friend, Rachel, cheered. They toasted at a rooftop bar the night Jenna moved into her new place. But that was surface. A picture. Not real. Her new job as a registered nurse paid decently, but the hospital floor was chaos. Understaffed, under-resourced, always loud. Patients screamed. Families blamed. Her supervisor barely knew her name. No one cared how hard she'd worked to get here. 12-hour night shifts drained her body. 5 shifts a week numbed her mind. She began skipping meals. Then sleep. Then calls. Rachel stopped inviting her out when Jenna kept leaving early or not showing up at all. And Carla started slipping in those quiet, poisonous suggestions. Maybe if you dressed better at work. Maybe if you looked less tired. Maybe if you aimed higher. What Jenna never told them was that she had never felt more alone. The apartment, twice the size of her old one, echoed with silence. She kept the TV on constantly just to fill space. She left the lights on all night because the dark reminded her too much of those evenings Marcus would come home after back-to-back shifts and collapse onto the couch beside her. He always smelled like delivery bags and sweat. He always smiled like he was proud just to be near her. And she had called him dead weight. She tried to shake it off. Went on a few dates with polished men, software sales, business consultants, financial analysts. They wore button-downs and made confident eye contact. They talked about cars they wanted to buy and vacations they were planning. Not one of them asked about her. Not one of them made her feel anything. She stopped replying to messages. Stopped dating. Stopped pretending. One night, after back-to-back shifts and a cold shower that couldn't wash the fatigue from her bones, Jenna sat down in front of a drawer she hadn't opened since moving in. Inside was a mess of loose paper, takeout menus, forgotten receipts, a few dried pins. And at the bottom, an old envelope. Not even sealed. Just worn soft at the corners. Inside, a photo. Marcus, smiling, holding a broken umbrella over her head in front of their old apartment. She was laughing, clutching a bag of groceries, soaked from the knees down. Neither of them had money back then. But they had that. She stared at the photo until her vision blurred. She didn't cry. She didn't move. And for the first time, she whispered his name aloud. It tasted like regret. She grabbed her phone, opened her contacts, typed his name. Nothing. She had deleted it months ago, confident she'd never need it again. She tried social media. He was gone. No posts, no tags, not even an old comment on a photo. It was like he'd never existed. She texted his brother, the last number she had. No answer. She emailed an old friend of his. The message bounced. She even tried searching their old landlord. No trace. And the more she searched, the colder it felt. He hadn't just left her. He had erased himself from the world she lived in. She had thought he'd be waiting. Somewhere. Somehow. Now she wasn't so sure. And that terrified her more than anything. The first call came during lunch. Unknown number. I let it ring out. Then another. And another. By the time I got back to the garage, there were 17 missed calls. By evening 42, I didn't pick up. Not because I was afraid. Because I already knew who it was. No one else calls you that many times unless they're desperate. And only one person in my life had reason to be. Jenna. I sat at the edge of the workbench, phone buzzing against the metal, vibrating like a dying insect. I watched the screen flash, then go dark. Then flash again. 104 by the next morning. 160 by noon. She wasn't going to stop. Riley noticed before I said anything. We were having coffee on the back steps behind the diner. Her camera beside her, a notebook on her knee. She glanced once at the screen when it lit up in my palm. You're not picking up, she said. Not asking. Just noticing. No. Do you want to? No. That was enough for her. By evening, I gave in, not to curiosity, not to hope, but to finality. I walked behind the garage, away from the street, and pressed call. It rang once. Then her voice. Breathless. Broken. Lucas. Oh my God, Lucas, I've been trying. I didn't know if this was still your number. Please don't hang up, please. I said nothing. I made a mistake, she cried. I thought it was what I needed. I thought I'd feel stronger without you, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. Still silence. I miss you. I miss everything. You were. God, you were the only real thing I ever had, and I threw it away. Her voice cracked, crumbled. She wasn't just sad. She was unraveling. I need you to come back, she said, whispering now. Please. We can fix this. I can fix this. I'll do anything. Just tell me where you are. Just talk to me. And that was the thing. She thought I was still where she left me. Waiting. Hoping. Clinging to the memory of who she used to be. She didn't understand that the man who carried her through every exam, every meltdown, every dream, that man was buried. Quietly. Permanently. So I spoke. Not loud. Not angry. Just enough. I'm not the man you left behind anymore. Nothing else. Just that. There was silence on her end, dead air, like the breath had been punched out of her. Lucas, she said finally, her voice small. Please. I ended the call. No ceremony. No last words. Just a soft click. And it was done. I stood there for a while, phone heavy in my hand, the smell of motor oil in the air, the wind pushing dry leaves against my boots. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not victory. Just clarity. She was still living in the past, but I had already stepped out of it. The door slammed open hard enough to rattle the windows. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused mid-air. Forks froze on their way to mouths. She stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, hair plastered to her face, breathing like she'd run through a storm, which maybe she had. Jenna. She scanned the diner until her eyes landed on me. I didn't move. I was behind the counter with Gus, wiping a tray. Riley was 2 stools down, flipping through her notebook, calm as a loaded rifle. Lucas, Jenna said, hoarse, broken. Her voice cracked down the middle like glass under pressure. She stepped forward. 1, 2. Knees buckled. She fell right there, on the checkered floor, palms flat, eyes wide. Gasps spread like sparks through the room. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm sorry. I didn't know what I had. I was wrong. I need you back. I can't, her voice caught. I can't breathe without you. No one said a word. Even Gus leaned against the pass-through silently, arms crossed. I stepped around the counter. Slow. Deliberate. Kneeling down, I looked her in the eye. Not with rage. Not pity. Just precision. You taught me how to disappear, I said quietly. Now watch how it feels. She shook her head wildly. Please, no. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Why not? I asked. You killed us in a living room. I'm burying you in public. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I stood. Walked back to Riley. She stood as I reached her. I took her hand, lifted it, and kissed her knuckles. Not for show. For truth. I looked back once. Jenna was still on her knees. Mascara streaked. Dress soaked. Shoulders shaking. But I didn't feel power. I didn't feel triumph. I felt done. As we walked past her, out the door, I leaned down, no louder than a whisper. This is your real ending. No edits. No retakes. And I never looked back again.